Before we get started, I just want to point out that this isn't a political post. This post is to point out some of the issues that we could see and run into, and have seen already. If you don't make it to the end of this video, I want your takeaway to be this. 1, if you're pregnant or thinking about becoming pregnant, know where your nearest hospital is that does abortions. If you do not want to die, know where you can go for treatment. This isn't to be inflammatory, but I know most women don't think about dying when they get pregnant. But obviously unforeseen things happen. Complications happen. And if you want to make it home to your other children or your partner, then just plan forward thinking. This channel is about education and information, and I want all women to feel prepared for any given scenario. This is a safe space for everyone, so be sure to like, comment, share, and follow for more. Now let's dive in.
Hey girl, hey, it's Birth Bestie Nurserini, and I wanted to come talk to you in light of the election results and what's been happening in the last couple of years with some of the bans that have been put in place, intended to be bans against abortions, but it's also seeming to punish women who are having regular, unfortunate miscarriages of babies that they actually wanted. Hey guys, so we're going to go ahead and dive into this article on Joselie Barnica. And this is an article that was published by CNN on November 1st, 2024. And it starts out with a title of "A Woman Died After Being Told It Would Be a Crime to Intervene in Her Miscarriage at a Texas Hospital." Joselie Barnica grieved the news as she lay in a Houston hospital bed on September 3rd, 2021. The sibling she'd dreamt of giving her daughter would not survive this pregnancy. So we have someone who was already getting bad news. This was not someone that you would think of when you're thinking of abortions, right? Because this is what we call a miscarriage. However, it is important to note that medically we call miscarriages spontaneous abortions. So there is not much differentiation between spontaneous versus induced. It's just for our knowledge of how often a woman has been pregnant. So this is someone who just received bad news that she would not be able to give her daughter a sibling. And so this is really unfortunate. So this is not someone who did not want her baby. The fetus was on the verge of coming out, its head pressed against her dilated cervix. So it sounds like she probably had what is termed as an incompetent cervix. I hate that term, but that is the medical term for a cervix that dilates prematurely in a pregnancy. So yeah, she was 17 weeks pregnant and a miscarriage was in progress. Doctors noted in hospital records. At that point, they should have offered to speed up the delivery or empty her uterus to stave off a deadly infection. More than a dozen experts told ProPublica. But when Barnica's husband rushed to her side from his job on a construction site, she relayed what she said the medical team had told her. They had to wait until there was no heartbeat. It would be a crime to give her an abortion. So this was a situation where this baby was not going to survive because she was at a pre-viable gestation, right? So when we say pre-viable, we are usually looking at babies who are 24 weeks along, fetuses that are 24 weeks along. So this baby was 17 weeks. So for 40 hours, the anguished 28-year-old mother prayed for doctors to help her get home to her daughter. All the while, her uterus remained exposed to bacteria. So it also sounds like her water was probably broken, which then, of course, speeds up the dilation process usually. So water was broken, her cervix was dilated, she was in labor and having a miscarriage prior to viability. Meaning, if she would have had this baby at 17 weeks today, as it stood, the baby would not have been able to survive because it was too young, too small, too little to do anything for that baby at 17 weeks. So 3 days after she delivered, so she ended up delivering, Barnica died of an infection. Barnica is one of at least 2 Texas women who ProPublica found lost their lives after doctors delayed treating miscarriages, which fall into a gray area under the state's strict abortion laws that prohibit doctors from ending the heartbeat of a fetus. So, this is a tough situation for a woman to be in because she's already grieving the loss of a baby, of a future with a person, a little person. But now she also has to think about her health and whether or not she'll be able to get home to the family that awaits her there. So neither had wanted an abortion, but that didn't matter. Though proponents insist that the laws protect both the life of the fetus and the person carrying it, in practice, doctors have hesitated to provide care under threat of prosecution, prison time, and professional ruin. ProPublica is telling these women's stories this week, starting with Barnica's. Her death was preventable, for sure, according to more than a dozen medical experts who reviewed a summary of her hospital and autopsy records at ProPublica's request. They called her case horrific, astounding, and egregious. So this is the thing, right? There are lots of women who end up having miscarriages or missed abortions, right? Where they need to go in and evacuate the uterus. And this could be any person. This could happen way more often than we even realize. And if definitely all the states got on board with this type of thinking and these laws, then it will definitely increase the rate of maternal mortality. So the doctors involved in Barnica's care at HCA Houston Healthcare Northwest did not respond to multiple requests for comment on her case. In a statement, HCA Healthcare said, "Our responsibility is to be in compliance with applicable state and federal laws and regulations," and said that physicians exercise their independent judgment. The company did not respond to a detailed list of questions about Barnica's care. So that they kind of like put the ball in the court of the providers, the doctors, which is kind of unfair, right? Because it's not really up to them to do that, unfortunately, because if we lose a doctor for saving someone's life by doing something that's illegal, then that's one less doctor to care for maternity women. And it's just really unfortunate. Like all states, Texas has a committee of maternal health experts who review such deaths to recommend ways to prevent them. But the committee's reports on individual cases are not public, and members said they have not finished examining cases from 2021, the year Barnica died. Of course. ProPublica is working to fill gaps in knowledge about the consequences of abortion bans. Reporters scoured death data, flagging Barnica's case for its concerning cause of death, sepsis, which we're going to talk about, involving products of conception. We tracked down her family, obtained autopsy and hospital records, and enlisted a range of experts to review a summary of her care that ProPublica created in consultation with 2 doctors. Among these reports were more than a dozen OBGYNs and maternal fetal medicine. So maternal fetal medicine doctors are the high-risk doctors of obstetrics from across the country, including researchers at prestigious institutions, doctors who regularly handle miscarriages, and experts who have served on state maternal mortality review committees or held posts at national professional medical organizations. So after reviewing the 4-page summary, which included the timeline of care noted in hospital records, all agreed that requiring Barnica to wait to deliver until after there was no detectable fetal heartbeat violated professional medical standards because it could allow time for an aggressive infection to take hold. They said there was a good chance she would have survived if she was offered an intervention earlier. Definitely. Sepsis, if you treat sepsis early, then you have a fairly decent chance of surviving. But sepsis is extremely deadly, but you have to be able to remove the source of the infection. In this case, it would have been the fetus. So if this was Massachusetts or Ohio, she would have had that delivery within a couple of hours, a national patient safety expert in obstetrics named Dr. Susan Mann said. She teaches at Harvard, by the way. Many noted a striking similarity to the case of Savita, some long last name, a 31-year-old woman who died of septic shock in 2012 after providers in Ireland refused to empty her uterus while she was miscarrying at 17 weeks. Same thing. When she begged for care, a midwife told her, "This is a Catholic country." The resulting investigation and public outcry galvanized the country to change its strict ban on abortion. So you are inadvertently killing one person to not kill what you consider to be another person. So you're still killing someone, right? You're letting someone die. It's an interesting thought process. But in the wake of deaths related to abortion access in the United States, leaders who support restricting the right have not called for any reforms. Last month, ProPublica told the stories of 2 Georgia women, Amber Thurman and Candy Miller, whose deaths were deemed preventable by the state's Maternal Mortality Review Committee after they were unable to access legal abortions and timely medical care amid an abortion ban. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp called the reporting fear-mongering. Former President Donald Trump has not weighed in except to joke that in his Fox News town hall on women's issues would get better ratings than a press call where Thurman's family spoke about their pain. Leaders in Texas, which has the nation's oldest abortion ban, has witnessed the consequences of such restrictions longer than those in any other state. In lawsuits, court petitions, and news stories, dozens of women have said they faced dangers when they were denied abortions, starting in 2021. One suffered sepsis like Barnica, but survived after 3 days in ICU. That's how bad sepsis is. ICU, and if you're lucky, you'll survive, and if not, you'll die. She lost part of her fallopian tube. So the pro-life, now you're cutting down on her chances to even have another baby because she's lost a tube. But anyway, lawmakers have made small concessions to clarify 2 exceptions for medical emergencies. But even in those cases, doctors risk up to 99 years in prison and fines of $100,000. They can argue in court that their actions were not a crime, much like defendants can claim self-defense after being charged with murder. So guys, I'm not going to keep reading this because it goes on. to a lot of, detail and stuff. But it's really unfortunate. It says when Barnica's husband arrived, she told him doctors couldn't intervene until there was no heartbeat. The next day, Dr. Shirley Lima, an OB on duty, diagnosed an inevitable miscarriage. In Barnica's chart, she noted that the fetal heartbeat was detected and wrote that she was providing Barnica with pain medication and emotional support. So one of the things that we do learn about in nursing school is the feeling of impending doom, right? So most times people are sitting in this state of death, knowing that they will be dying, that they are actively dying, excuse me. And that's a really sad way to be in. She could probably feel herself getting weaker, feeling sicker, and just kind of slipping away. And as you can see, it didn't take long. It was 3 days after she had the baby, although it doesn't say quite how long it took her to actually have the baby, like how long her water was broken. So yeah, this is really unfortunate, but I wonder and suspect that we will see more of these if these bans are enacted across the country. But I wanted to talk about these women because I do think we need to pay attention to what's happening, because like many things, until it affects us personally, people aren't really hearing about it or thinking about it or caring about it. But this could happen to, like the mom of 8 who is pregnant with her 9th child and ends up miscarrying, you know what I'm saying? And then she can't get medication, right? Because it's an abortion, but really she has 8 other children at home, and this 16-week baby is not going to pull through anyway. It could happen to the mom, and it has already happened to the mom in Texas. So, I mean, it can happen to anyone is what I'm saying. And I don't know if the intentions of this ban were well thought through, if they were thought through at all. And I don't know if the intent was to destroy families who did want children, but now they have a motherless child at home because of this ban. So I think it's having unintended consequences, unknown to the people who are putting it in place because they're not medical people. I think this is going south, and I think that if this election and what people voted for inadvertently by voting this way in the election is any indication, we're going to see a lot more maternal mortality. And again, it could be anyone. It could be the 12-year-old child who was assaulted and now is pregnant and, miscarries, and now she is, septic and she can't get, the healthcare that she needs. So I do implore people to kind of think big picture and how this can impact people, because this is bad. I mean, I'm telling you the story of just 2 people, but there are many more that have had this unexpected and avoidable outcome. Yeah. So in the article, we do mention a couple of medical conditions, one being sepsis. Sepsis is a really nasty infection. It's like the infection on steroids, right? If you can think of the worst, it is the worst. And people suffer and they die from sepsis. And if they don't die, or even if they do die, the hospital course can be super long. It can be super devastating. And if you survive it, it can have like life-altering conditions attached to it. Okay, so now we're going to dive into the case of this other young lady. This article is from People, and it says, Texas teen suffering miscarriage dies days after baby shower due to abortion ban as mom begs doctors to do something. So this article is from November 4th, so just the other day, 2024. So we read it. Nevaeh Crane, 18, died from sepsis after doctors had to confirm fetal demise before intervening in her miscarriage. So here we go with the same thing, guys. It's like we keep doing the same thing over and over. That's the definition of what? Right, insanity. So, some points here. Nevaeh Crane was 6 months pregnant when she developed sepsis while suffering a miscarriage. The 18-year-old went to the emergency room 3 times with severe symptoms, and doctors had to confirm fetal demise before intervening. She died hours later in the ICU. A Texas teen died after the state's ban on abortion stopped her from getting life-saving medical care while experiencing pregnancy complications. So on October 28, 2023, the day of her baby shower, Nevaeh Crane woke up with a headache. Shortly after, the 18-year-old, who was 6 months pregnant, developed a fever followed by nausea and vomiting. She struggled through her baby shower, and by 3 p.m., her family decided to take her to the ER. Crane's boyfriend, Randall Broussard, drove her to a nearby hospital where they sat in the waiting room for 4 hours. Staff reportedly gave her a plastic pan as she continued to vomit while waiting. After testing, Crane was diagnosed with strep throat. The teen was also experiencing abdominal pain, in addition to vomiting, but her pregnancy was not evaluated. She was discharged and prescribed antibiotics. In the middle of the night, Crane woke up. her mother, Candace Fales, complaining of intense stomach pain, according to the outlet. Fales drove her daughter to a different hospital where an OBGYN reported that she had a fever of 102.8 and a high pulse. She was showing signs of sepsis. Sepsis is a serious condition in which the body responds improperly to an infection, according to the Mayo Clinic. It can lead to septic shock and death. In a typical year, at least 1.7 million adults in the U.S. develop sepsis, and nearly 270,000 die from the infection, according to the CDC. Crane was given IV fluids and antibiotics for 2 hours, but her condition continued to decline. In addition to strep, she also had a urinary tract infection. However, a nurse checked that her baby had a heartbeat, so she was free to be discharged from the hospital with more antibiotics. This is wild. I mean, she was diagnosed with sepsis and discharged home. I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, sepsis has to be treated fairly aggressively. It's bullshit, Fales said, per the outlet, as Crane had to be taken home in a wheelchair because she was unable to walk. The following morning, Crane cried in pain to her family, and by 9 a.m., she was back at the hospital after she started experiencing heavy bleeding. She was suffering a miscarriage. Medical staff started Crane on IV antibiotics, and OB on duty also reported that she couldn't find a fetal heartbeat at the time. Fales told the outlet that a half hour later, she noticed her daughter's thighs were covered in blood. Do something, Fales pleaded with the doctors. The near total ban on abortion in Texas meant that the doctors couldn't do anything to remove the unviable fetus unless Crane's life was at risk. I didn't know that even once the baby was gone, they could not remove it. So they are saying that you have to wait for the baby to deliver itself. Let me tell you, if we let women who are full term wait until the baby delivered itself, some women, there'll be a lot more deaths, even full term, because not all babies are going to come out vaginally, unfortunately. Some have to be manually removed. In this case, full term, we'd say a C-section, right? But they couldn't even get this baby out for her. Oh, she would either have to get sick enough for doctors to intervene or miscarry on her own. Pretty consistently, people say, until we can be absolutely certain this isn't a normal pregnancy, we can't do anything because it could be alleged that we were doing an abortion. Dr. Tony Ogburn, an OB in San Antonio, told ProPublica. Eventually, doctors performed a second ultrasound to confirm fetal demise more than 2 hours after Crane arrived at the hospital. At that point, Crane was unable to sign consent form due to extreme pain, so Fales quickly signed a release to allow her daughter to undergo an unplanned DNC or an unplanned cesarean section. However, doctors decided it was now too dangerous to perform the procedure, according to medical records, because she was too sick. So this is like crazy. None of this makes sense, right? And it's not the doctors. It's the stupid laws and rules that don't make sense that are made by non-medical people. They suspected that she was bleeding internally after developing a dangerous complication of sepsis called DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation. DIC is basically when you're bleeding out. DIC is really hard to control. It's really scary. Oh, damn. And it's basically like you're bleeding out of control. Like your platelets are not clotting anymore. Your blood is literally running out of different orifices that have, it can be blood out of your eyes. It can be blood, for her, it would be out of her vagina because she's having a miscarriage. It could bleed out of her ears. Like just randomly blood starts going everywhere. And first of all, you need to be at a big enough medical center where they can replenish your blood, and give you lots of fluid. But if you imagine blood just running out of you and trying to catch up with that is very challenging. Fales recalled, her daughter sitting up in the hospital bed as black blood ran from her mouth and nostrils, telling her, "You're strong, Nevaeh. God made her strong." Crane died hours later in the ICU. ProPublica reviewed more than 800 pages of Crane's medical records and consulted with medical experts who said that if the teens received proper care, she might have survived. Since her death, Fales has sought legal action to hold hospitals accountable. However, according to Texas law, emergency care cases require plaintiffs to prove willful and wanton. They're following the law, and even though the law is dumb, they can't break the law, and then they're in jail. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, why don't they go ahead and just risk it and do it? Well, then, what about that person's family? What about their loved ones that are at home? So, it's a tough situation to be in. I would just leave Texas to be, or any of those other crazy states that are doing this ban. So, yeah.
I guess I don't get, why it's okay to let a woman die when we know the baby inside of her is also going to die. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if mom has sepsis, if mom is getting sick, then baby's going to be sick. And baby is pre-viable and not going to live.
especially not with an infect. Even if it was 24 weeks viable and septic, that would be a hard one to beat for a 24 weeker as well. So I don't know. I just think this is a little rough. And I'm not saying people who are against abortion should have to do abortion. Like, no, like if you're a provider and that's not what you do, then you know what I'm saying, then another doctor can do it. And same, there's hospitals that don't do it. And that, I think that's fine, you know, but I think to let someone die when we know it's avoidable just to not save another life, because we're not saving a life by letting them stay pregnant until the fetus heartbeat stops. Like that heartbeat will stop, right? So, you know, and if you think about it, they're both suffering. Like baby inside is suffering at 17 weeks, sick, septic, not feeling well, slowly dying. And mom is also experiencing the same thing. I just don't see if I don't know if I can quite grasp it and understand the whole thing. And I think it's really unfortunate that these two women that we're going to talk about have lost their lives to something that was avoidable. But let me know what you guys think. Again, you know, misoprostol is used for abortions, but it's also used to induce labor, which is delivery, right? And I don't know, maybe there's a different definition to abortion that I'm not aware of. Like maybe people think babies are just being like sucked out with misoprostol. But if these women had misoprostol, at least, you know, they could have delivered vaginally still, you know, potentially. So I don't know. I don't know if everybody knows all of the things. And I'm not saying I know all of the things, but I do think these things are something that we really need to think long and hard about as a country, as women of all backgrounds. I will also say that the decision to terminate in these situations where, you know, baby's not doing good and the end is inevitable, it's not an easy decision for these women. Like the young lady, the 18-year-old at Nevaeh, she was having a baby shower. She wanted her baby. The other woman wanted to give her daughter a sibling. So to do these things are not easy decisions. And I recently saw a case where, you know, mom had to make that hard decision. And it's like, she didn't want to. She cried. Her husband cried. And it was like, basically, your baby's going to die either way. We are trying to save your life, you know, that type of situation. So it's really sad. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. You know, no nasty comments, please. It's not about that. It's just information and food for thought. Like, comment, share, and follow for more.